Hey guys, hope you're good. Welcome back. Hope you've had a good week. And today we're doing hardware. So ooh, we're looking at this. Wes Audio Rear. Love it. Look at this. Tubes, valve tubes. This is a Vari-Mu tube compressor. It has transformers in here as well. Two tubes, two transformers. Vari-Mu meaning it's a variable rate of compression. There's no ratio knob. So as much as you drive it on the input, this is what gives it the Vari-Mu sound, the variable sound. So that's the variable rate of compression that you're going to get from the input. It all adds to the sound along with the mix knob, parallel compression, threshold, output, and then this is amazing here. We have total harmonic distortion button as well, THD. So levels of that. I mean, I love driving stuff anyway, but for stuff like mixing and mastering, it's great to be able to just subtly kind of add some thickness to the actual overall mix or master. For drum bussing, it's great for smashing it on the extreme mode. You can really drive it. The inputs, I always go high with the THD button and then just use the mix knob to taste to get that sort of like parallel crushing going alongside the drum bus. For basses, it's amazing. It does something really good with bass. I think it's the Vari-Mu sound because it seems to make it bigger and enhance it more. And of course you have sidechain filters on here as well. So the sidechain filters will then stop the bass getting interfered with the compression. So it's great to be able to, I think it's from 150 to 60 hertz. So you can actually really cut it off and then the bass can breathe a bit. I've never really compressed my low and subs and bass that much at all in 30 years. So, and that's stuff going to vinyl, all that kind of stuff. I like to let it breathe a bit, and that's great to have the sidechain filter to be able to cut that off. Wes Audio stuff. Big shout out to A-Science who said, "Oh, you've got to try this stuff out." And when I did, I got rid of loads of gear and then I went just full Wes Audio. Big shout out to Wes Audio for great products. It's good stuff. And if you want to see any more of the gear, we can show it in future videos. But big shout out to Dom Cigalas, my good friend. He said, "Show us that. You've got to show it. Do a review." So I'm gonna. This is a review, and we're gonna plug it into the rack in a minute, and then we're gonna go through some elements. And in the week, I also sampled my Model D. I got rid of my Model D, so I put it through this and some of the Wes stuff, but primarily this. So me just playing some wacky one shots and riffs and stuff and just driving it through here because it's great to be able to drive it. You know, it's got the two tubes here and then you've got the two transformers underneath that. So between them two going through that with the THD distortion and the drive, you'll hear it yourself in a minute. Real thickness to the sound, real depth to the sound. Again, like I say, synth bass, the Model D, it sounded great. I use it for mixing and mastering all the time. I use it for my sample packs, sound design. I've never really used it on vocals, to be fair. I've never used it on vocals. I find it's great more on program material that's got more like a low end in it, you know, like drum and bass, hip hop, you know, like 808 type stuff, break beats and stuff, house stuff. When it kicks get a low end kick, it brings all that out. It really emphasizes that and thickens it. I found reggae and dub stuff as well. So yeah, anything that has a low end element and like a breakbeat sort of percussion element, it kind of lifts them and lifts up the low end as well. A real thickness to the sound. So yeah, love it. So we're going to show it on some elements, some drum buses, some synth basses and all that kind of stuff. Free downloads. I'll put a link at the bottom of the pack that I made for the Model D stuff. Yeah, it's just me noodling around and driving it through all this, but yeah, it's free. Enjoy. And yeah, it'll be down in the description. So let's put this back in the rack, fire it up, and then we're going to get to business. Like I say, Wes Audio, I love what they're doing, the hybrid system, full digital recall, everything's fully automatable as well by the knobs in Cubase or whatever DAW you're using. I just love that fact to be able to have full analog units with digital recall because I use a hybrid system in the studio. So that's what I do. I like to have the best of both worlds. Okay, so let's get it in the rack and we're good to go. Okay, so this is what it looks like in plugin form. As you can see here, the knobs correlate exactly to the hardware. If you can see the hardware, we've shown it before. So everything that you can see on the plugin is also on the hardware. Everything's automatable, which is great, which we'll show in a second. But just to quickly recap, total harmonic distortion, medium and high modes, full bypass, our sidechain filter, our attack, parallel processing, wet and dry, release, output, and then the threshold, which is a ceiling in which it starts to compress, and then the input as well. What's really cool is we have A, B, and C. So we can actually choose between A, B, C, and so on. So we can actually choose different types of maybe mastering. So I like to do different types of masters. So like a pushed master, a controlled master, I don't know, maybe a radio master, maybe a streaming platform master. So it's great to be able to have these different versions. As you hear the click there, it's going through. Literally is doing the digital recall of the analog hardware. Great, great, great. Absolutely love it. So let's get it through some program materials. So I've got a break here out of Cubase. This is out of the MIDI library. This is out of the MIDI base, should I say. And let's listen to before and after. So it's fully bypassed right now. And the setting that I have here is just like a preset that I kind of use. And straight away you'll be able to hear what it's doing. And then I'll explain how it's doing it. And then I'll do before and after. So you're actually getting a real idea of what this thing is actually doing to the sounds. And remember, like I said, each program material is totally different. So drums, it will respond differently. Basses, it will respond differently, which we'll show in a minute. Synth basses, it will respond differently. And program material, meaning tracks, whole tracks with different elements and instruments mixed together in a mix stage, that will also act differently with this Vari-Mu tube. So here we go. So you can see here, there's a lot of low energy going on. It's quite a bass heavy break, but like I said, the rear is great for thickening up bass. It seems to just enhance bass. And obviously with the sidechain filter taken off here, it's giving me that low end to breathe. In 30 years, I've never compressed my low end and let it breathe a bit. So now you can hear, now when I take off the bypass, before and after, you'll hear the real weight coming in. Obviously it's an extreme value with the high total harmonic distortion, but you'll get the idea. So before, and here comes after. And straight away, yes, you're getting loudness, but it's like perceived loudness, because you can see there in the channel strip, and this is like on the stereo fader, post fader, the very last slot in Cubase. This is on a stereo output. You can see there that it's perceived loudness. So you're getting loudness, but you're not really getting loudness, if you know what I mean. So it's great to be able to then really record that real time as you're hearing it. So that's a great thing about hardware. You can push things a certain way, especially this, like the tube stuff as well. You can really drive things, and they won't really break up too much. But that's put it that way. They won't really break up too much. So let's start doing things now to taste now. So of course we're going to do extreme values. So we're going to put it all a bit wet. We're going to put the input all the way up, and at the threshold we're going to leave it and just take a little bit down. So the threshold is the ceiling in which it begins to activate the compression and start to compress things. So it's like your compression ceiling. So the threshold, I always just use your ears, but also make sure you're dialing it down and seeing what it does, hearing what it does, more importantly. So let's do that. So you can see it really crushing it now. Well, you can hear it really, sort of say, really crushing it now. It's really squashing down the transients. So you might want to do that to control a drum bus. And if you're doing that, that's fine. So all you need to do now is to bring some sort of cohesion back and some clarity back and some control back, is to just dial back down your mix knob, your parallel processing knob. So you're actually mixing it down. So you're actually mixing it down, back down to maybe more of a dry level. So you're getting the input, which is the Vari-Mu style. This is the variable rate of compression going in. You want that as high as possible, I think, or at least pretty high. So you want to be going through the tubes and the transformers. You want that sound, but now we use the threshold and the mix wet and dry to control how much harmonics we're imparting, how much fatness, how much depth, how much 3D sort of bass we're adding to this actual track or program material. So I'm dialing back the dry a little bit, and now it shouldn't be as pushed, shouldn't be as heavy. Let's bypass. So you can hear it straight away. It's nice. It's getting like a sort of 3D sort of thickness now. It's controlled. So, I've got about 23 on here. So it's a quarter of the way through with the wet sort of parallel processing that I'm adding. Obviously, the input gains are all the way up. And the threshold ceiling, you can hear it's really crushing it and controlling it now. So now let's maybe dial back some of this total harmonic distortion, because this is the high level. So it might go medium now, for instance. And I might want to maybe, for instance, bring some of this threshold back. And let's get that. And you can hear the transients coming back now, it's breathing more. Before and after. Now the great thing about this as well is because we have different types of preset manager in here, A, B, and C, we can actually, like I said, have different types of extreme values maybe, controlled mixed, pushed mix, sorry, we can have like controlled master, pushed master, radio master, and I love the fact to be able to do that in the box visually as a VST plugin, but also have the full analog control replicated here right in front of my eyes. And as I do this, it's actually doing it on the hardware. I might not be able to see it on now, but it's actually doing that and replicating that on the hardware. So let's go back to preset A. Medium is quite good. We've shown it inputs all the way through, thresholds there, a bit more wet, and I'd be kind of happy with that. Now at fast attack, I always have a fast attack to pick up them transients, but the release acts a little bit differently. So the release is almost sort of aggressive as you go to higher values, which is not our usual sort of compressor would work. So, but it's a Vari-Mu one, so things are a little bit slightly different, and I like that though. But around this 9 is where I usually work. Things can breathe, it can pick up the compression again, and nothing's really getting too sort of unruly what you're doing as far as most program material is concerned. But just check out what it's doing if I show it you as an example. Now we're going to change the release. So you can hear how that release is really transforming the sound. It's almost like letting something, almost like a gate. It's letting in a certain amount of compression at a certain time, and then it's opening it up or tightening it up. And I find that the stronger values, obviously, it's almost like dialing in and tightening up that compression. It's more focused, but I like to let things breathe a little bit. So always a faster attack and a not so slow release here, and that kind of works for me. Great, so that's it on drums. Let's have a look at maybe bass. Bass is a good one. So here's a sub bass. A cool tip for you is, because you're going into something like maybe a hardware, if you have something like this or any other hardware compressors and you're using it in the digital domain as well, and you're recording real time back in, it's best to get your levels in your DAW, should I say, as controllable as possible, and have the hardware doing all the driving. So for instance, the input here is quite cranked, and that's good, but then if it's getting a bit too unruly, then use the actual waveform and the fader. And you can see here on the fader I've brought it down a bit, and that gives me some headroom. And what that means is I've got all this to work with him to populate this hardware processing. So when I record it, I can actually, this is all my gain, I can fill this gain up. With this headroom here, I can fill it up with the actual hardware. So it gives you more headroom to work with in. So don't be trying to work with things that are like this, because you're really going to degrade the sound, and you can't really take anything away from the sound then. It's like, sorry, you can't really add anything to the sound then, but you can definitely take away from the sound. And so what you want to do is make sure that your waveform's not like that, because you're going to degrade the sound, it'll destroy the sound, and more importantly, it doesn't matter what piece of kit you've got, it's still going to sound pretty rough. Put it that way, pretty rough. So bring it back down, as my headroom, I'm happy with that, about -5, got a fader down as well, and now I can work within this sub. So because this is really good at bringing out sub bass, you don't need to go mad with the total harmonic distortion, but to show you extreme values again, I'm going to go high, I'm always going to leave the input up, and then we're going to use things like the threshold and the wet and dry parallel processing to dictate how much tube compression and transformer compression and total harmonic distortion is going to be added to this sample, which is a sub bass. So before and after. So wow, you can hear that. That's rattling this studio. So you're getting real nice low end there, real nice low end fatness, and that's me pushing it. So it's quite cranked really. Inputs up high. There's not much threshold going on. There's a tiny bit taken off at the, so it's just controlling a bit. The mix knob is 75% wet, and then we've got the fast attack, and we've got full total harmonic distortion. So between the input, which is the variable mu, which is the rate of compression, going into total harmonic distortion in high mode with 75% wet mode, that's giving me nice lots of fatness and warmth. And of course, if it gets too mad and it gets too unruly, we've got the output knob to control things and tame things. And I would do it in here as far as like real-time processing is concerned. After the fact, then I would go back into Cubase, for instance, and then change the headroom like we've shown before. But I kind of want to stay in this realm of the hardware and get that right. Once I get that right, I can save it as a preset. I can save it as a default preset within Cubase. It's fully recallable. Or I can save it within the Wes Audio structure here, and then I can save it as a preset wherever I want. And of course, we have different banks and all that kind of stuff as well. There's different types of banks, so you can have, look, you can go right across G, H, I. You know, lots of flexibility here. So let's listen to that again. Without. And normally, if I was making a track now, I'd take that. I would just take it. I would happily roll into that and yet get the track rolling. But let's go a bit more controlled now. Let's dial it down a little bit. So, for instance, I'm going to save this as, I'm going to call it bass, just for this demonstration. So for this demonstration, I really like how that's sounding, so I might want to just maybe do another version just to make sure it's not too much, but keeping that flavour. So all I'm going to do is go to B, I'm going to load this preset in again, bass, there it is again, and now I'm going to take it down, total harmonic distortion. I'm going to take it off actually. I'm going to take off the total harmonic distortion, I'm going to push up a bit more wet, leave the threshold where it is, and maybe push the output a tiny bit. And now we can get this a nice little variation between the two. So this is how you would then do different types of masters. So you can now suit that to taste. So I'm going to go back to where I was originally at. I'm going to go to the original preset. This is where I was at. Happy with that. And now you get to see an idea of how much depth you can get out of that. I mean, the total harmonic distortion, you don't have to have it on. I find with bass, because it's only one type of instrumentation that you're going to be using. Obviously, if it was bass with a drum beat on top of it with something else, then the high total harmonic distortion I've found is just, it can get too much. It's going to affect too many instruments at the same time, really change the tone of the track. Unless you're purposely trying to go for something like that, it's not particularly advisable. That's my own personal opinion on the rear. Medium's great. Medium's just a nice middle ground. But again, you might want to have it really driven, the sound. There's no rules. But for mastering, I find that medium works really, really well. But although high does bring up a lot of the lows and meatiness and thickness, sometimes it can get a bit too thick. So I like what they've done. Medium is just the happy ground for me for mastering. Absolutely. Okay, so what I also did was I had a Model D and I got rid of it. Before I got rid of it, all this week I've been noodling with it, doing those little noodling and stuff. So down in the comments, there'll be a free sample pack of all these. Gone through all the my valve stuff and all that kind of stuff as well. So a free sample pack for you. It's just me noodling, one shots and stuff, synth sounds out of the Model D. a little selection of samples there you may or may not find useful. There'll be many more to come, sample packs and stuff like that, but this is what I've just been doing this week while I've been going through loads of equipment. So yeah, so this is to show you what it would do on a synth bass, for instance. So obviously a sub bass, you know what you're getting, it's a sine wave, it's a sub, okay, it's only hitting certain frequency ranges at lower octaves. But synth bass, you might have a saw on there, you might have a triangle, you might have you know, I don't know, synth sound on there, a layer, it might be laid with a string and all that kind of stuff. So there's other elements going into play. And so let's hear how that will affect it with this then. Let's see what the Vari-Mu will do to a synth sound with a sub in there, with a lead on there on top of it, you know, sawtooth, all that kind of stuff. And here we go. So before and after, leave it as it was, bypassed. So there's a bit of a sound on there straight away. And now we're going to come in with my preset. Now, obviously, straight away, it's like, what the hell? It's like, it's just overkill now. So this is what you would do. First of all, like we spoke to before, I'm just going to give myself a little bit more headroom back. That's fine. Now, because it is too much, I can dial back the total harmonic distortion. Because this is where sometimes it can get too much, you see, because it's not just a sub bass. It's got a lead on it. It's layered. You know, it's like 2 or 3 oscillators at the same time. So I'm going to go to medium now. Bit better. So now let's take back some of the dry and take the threshold down a little bit. So it's really going to control it a bit more now. So we're bringing down the active compression of the Vari-Mu. We're actually controlling how much compression we're going to squeeze it all down by. I'm not going to go extreme. I'm just going to take off a little bit. Much better. Before and after. So automatically you can hear it, can't you? You can hear that low end just coming in now. Obviously we see it on the analyzer as well. So it's really getting that low end back into it as well. So it's kind of giving more life to this sound. Like you're not having to put an EQ on it. You're not having to use a bass booster plugin or all these kind of things. It's like this actual unit is giving me, and that is the tubes. It's the transformers and the tubes. And set up in that variable mode there, going for the input, is actually adding that thickness and depth, and that's what Vari-Mus will give you, and that's what tubes will definitely give you, that sort of depth, fatness, and warmth. And this is the best one that I've used. I've got a few tube and valvey type stuff here on the right and underneath as well, and this is killer. I absolutely love it. And the fact in the small form factor with total recall, game changer. So okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to start dialing back the threshold. I'm going to close the ceiling down a bit more. I'm going to add a bit more wet, and then I'm going to put up the high total amount of distortion. So yeah, it's going to be a bit pushed, but I'm also controlling the ceiling now. So this is what you do. This is the sort of art of compression. You're sort of like dancing with certain elements to make them fit. There's no rules to it. You're using your ears and you're being sensible. So, you know, you might be driving it, but then you're going to be controlling it with the threshold and so on and so on. So although I'm putting real total harmonic distortion up to high, which is really going to be aggressive, on top of the tubes, on top of the transformers, I'm also going to bring the ceiling down to control that as well. And then the wet and mix knob means I'm going to make it a bit more dry, a bit more wet, or in the middle as well. So before and after. Totally controlled that now. So now I can start maybe getting a bit cheeky here and just saying, okay, let's come like to like 75% here. Let's a bit more wetter as well. Maybe even a bit more, you know. So the threshold was really dictating how this is responding to this program material. So it's working out really well with just a threshold. So you can hear then as I'm bringing it up now to like, you know, is it 85%? It's actually 13.5 on the knob, but you can just, that little jump there between these two values, it's the bottom end started to come back more into it now. So you can actually really, almost like a mix knob, like literally mixing in how much bass you want to add. Perfect. And that in conjunction with the sidechain filter means I can just tweak this a taste and still have really high total harmonic distortion. Love that. Brilliant. So yeah, these samples will be, and a few more will be in a pack in the description below. Of course, I will add loads more sample packs when I'm doing sound design stuff and I'm doing my other Loop Masters type packs and stuff. Whilst I'm doing them, I'll be doing other sample packs as well, and I'll be putting them in the description below. So feel free to check them out, do whatever you want with them. Please let me know if you put them in a tune or you use any of them or you found any of them useful. Just let me know in the comments. That's really nice. And thanks for all the comments that have been coming in as well, and likes, shares, and subscribes. If you haven't, you may as well do it. I've got tons of stuff to come. And if you want to see something in particular, like Dom said last week about seeing the Rio, if you want to see any more of the Wes Audio stuff and how that works into not just my workflow, but how you might use it and what's it like and how does it sound, more importantly, then just let me know in the comments below and it's all good. Okay, so finally, the big one. So how would you use it in a master? How would you master with the Rio, for instance? You've got the Rio, how will I master with it? Okay, so here's my track. This is one of my older tracks called Schoolboy on my label Jungle Rollers. This is it on the bottom, this waveform. So a really cool tip for you is when you do stuff like this and you want to do quick masters is to have a marker track. Right click in Cubase, for instance, if you're in Cubase, you create a marker track. So right click, add track, marker track. You can only have one per Cubase project, well, live open project, but you can have many markers in here. So if you keep pressing marker there, you can see all these markers populating. And so what that means is, for instance, I can then jump between the different types of markers real time. And it's great to be able, for instance, have a marker in the intro, chorus, bridge, and the drop. And then literally you can just pick up the highest part of the track and start working your magic on your master. Okay, so let's play a bit of the track so you get an idea of it. And then we'll go back to the drop and work it out. So nothing's on here now. It's all bypassed. It's a pre-master and there's nothing mastered on here. So you get the idea, it's quite, it's jungle, so it's quite bass heavy. But this is what I like at this Rio for now, so I can either maybe control that a little bit with a bit more of the analog sort of warmth and fatness, or I can maybe get some more bass out of there. Incredible as it is, it's quite bass heavy, you've seen it on the analyzer, I can get more out of that. So I'm going to stick to my normal input is quite high, threshold, I'm going to leave it somewhere around there, about 85, and then the wet, I will take it all the way to dry, which is almost like a true bypass now. So nothing's going to be active, nothing's going through anything because it's all dry, so it's technically flat. Total harmonic distortion, I'm going to take it to medium. And now we can actually then real time, you'll get an idea and see it as well. Real time, we can actually impart the harmonics. But what I am going to do is, I'm actually going to show you how it's working, I'm actually going to use automation. So, marker track, I can go straight to the drop. So it's truly dry, I'm truly ready. Really simple in Cubase to do automation, read, write, record, that's it, ready to roll, and I can do it real time. So I actually can then maybe do a real-time organic master by actually imparting certain saturation in certain points. Really, really cool. Now you can see me there drawing the lane in. Let's get it a bit more tidy. So I'm going to bring the track up to the automation lane, so it makes it a bit more tidy to be able to see, and maybe open it a bit more so you can see some of that. There we go. So now you can see that, and you can hear what this is actually doing, as well as seeing the automation. So Total Recall with automation, and this can be the knobs physically as well, actually on the rear. So physically I can do automation, and it will also show and replicate in the plugin as well as giving you the automation, as you can see there in Cubase. So you can see with them values, me opening up the wet there with them values of the real strong input, which is the Vari-Mu, the variable mu, so the rate of compression, with the threshold in the combination with that, just me opening up the wet with the medium total harmonic distortion, it's bringing loads of low out. So it's bringing loads of low end out. So if you have a master, maybe an old track or something like that, and it's missing a bit of lows, this is a really good starting point to be able to go, okay, you know what, I want to keep it the same kind of loudness, but I want lows to come back into it. I want to get a bit more depth, a bit more thickness, a bit more 3D, and I think the rear is amazing for that. And to be fair, only transformers and tubes can give you that kind of control, flexibility, and sound, I think, in my personal opinion. And you can hear it. So let's go one stage further then. So take off the automation for now. We're just going to play it as normal, but I'm going to go high now. So I'm going to go high, just show you the extreme example. Like, you can really push it and it can get too much, but just, you may as well know. Total harmonic distortion's on high, threshold, dial it back a bit there. So it's, yeah, so there's a lot of breathing going on here, ready open. I'm going to wet it, so it's full wet signal, and then you'll hear what I mean. So although it's horribly crushed, it's not like digital distortion, for instance. It's you can hear what's in there. You can actually hear elements still in there. And unbelievably, as pushed and scrunched up as that is, the low's still quite intact. The low's still quite there, and you can really pick it out, and it's still weighty. So again, that's what that gives you. So, I mean, yeah, that's what a Vari-Mu tube compressor would do for you. And again, it's a stereo unit. Again, like I say, you can use it on program material, or you could do what I did before and use it on the sub. So I like to do things like that when I'm mastering. Push it, push it, push it, and then start dialing things back to taste. Have a little rest with your ears, come back again, and that's how I've been mastering since the 90s. So it works well for me, I think. So far, so good. Touch wood. Right, so now we can start dialing it back now. So the threshold, again, like I said before, is the ceiling coming down, how much is affecting the compression of the program material. The wet and dry knob is how much wet am I imparting parallel processing, how much wet am I adding to the signal, how much dry am I adding to the signal. So what we're going to do is leave it on high for a minute, because I like the way it's bringing in the lows, but it was too driven, it was too much. I'm not going to touch the output. I'm not even going to touch the input. I'm just going to bring the threshold down a little bit, and I'm going to dry signal it. So I'm going to actually bring the dry back to halfway. And now let's see what that sounds like. Again, it's almost a bit too much, but it's kind of pleasing and appealing. Maybe because it's jungle and it's bass all over the place, but this can be anything. So you know, it might be a reggae track, it might be a rock track with real heavy kicks in the drum kit, a live drum kit. It might be some bass music. You know, it might be some trap with some 808. It could be some house. It could be anything really. So it all depends on the program material, how you're going to dictate the threshold and the mix and the wet knob and the THD buttons as well. But I think between the combination of those elements, you can get a great master just out of the rear. And then obviously you can add EQ later on if you need to. But yeah, I think it's great for many, many uses as far as mixing, mastering, and processing sound is as well. Yeah, I absolutely love it. So let me just for the road, dial it back to some sort of how I might master this track, because it is a pre-master, it is even mastered. Although it's out now, the mastered cut, this is the pre-master that I've found from the archives. I'm just going to dial things back to a sort of sensible level again, and this is how it would probably sound if I sent it out now as a master. And I'll be happy with that. And finally, let's take the total harmonic distortion off. So total harmonic distortion's off. I've brought a bit more of the wetness back. I've took some of the threshold back off as well, so it's opening up more. The ceiling's open a bit more, so things can breathe a bit more. And this is another sort of combination as well. So this is more like just transformers, just tubes now driven in the input. No other circuiting, like no total harmonic distortion. And you can hear this is also quite pleasing. So there you go. I hope you found that useful. If you want to see any more of the Wes stuff, I can show you at any time in the videos. Let me know in the comments. Like I say, I've got the Hyperion here and the Prometheus, the two wicked EQs. I've got the Mimas, which is like the 1176 clone, and I have the Phoebe, which is a great preamp. And I'm going to show something with that really cool in a few weeks, driving some old school hardware through it. And of course, I will be giving away the samples as well. So thanks for all the likes, shares, and subscribes, and I'll see you next week.